students to use medicines rationally for over 2 decades. He has 778 publications in various national and international journals. He was among the top 2% of scientists globally for the years 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022. He is a member of the World Association of Medical Editors. He is a fellow of the Academy of Medical Educators. He is an assessor for fellowship applications for the Academy of Medical Educators as well. He is an editor of 2 Nepalese journals, Journals of Karmal Academy and of Health Sciences, and Janaki Medical College Journal of Medical Sciences. He is a science popularizer and has written articles on medical and scientific subjects for newspapers and magazines. He enjoys traveling and is also a creative writer and photographer. Our next speaker is Edwin van Terkleven. He is a professor of reproductive health research in the Department of Midwifery and Health Sciences. He is trained in medical sociologist. He has published over 400 papers. He has written about interdisciplinary and multi-method research. He has co-authored nearly 40 publications on different aspects of academic publishing, including writing grants and research proposals. He has supervised more than 35 PhD students. He is a visiting professor at the Center of Disability Studies, Mahatma Gandhi University, Caroline, India, from 2020 to present, the School of Health Sciences at the University of Nottingham in England from 2017 to 2026, Noble College affiliated with our University of Nepal from 2012 till present, and Manmohan Memorial Institute of Health Sciences. He is co-author and co-editor of the textbook Academy, Writing and Publishing in Health and Social Sciences, published by Social Sciences Baha in Kanmuna, Nepal in 2022. Our third speaker is Professor Dr. Padam Simkhada. He is an Associate Dean International and Professor of Global Health at the University of Huddersfield. He has expertise and interest on internationalization in higher education sectors. He is an active researcher, having authored over 250 peer-reviewed articles and book chapters. He has supervised many PhD students. He is internationally known in global public health field. He has completed MSc in Public Health and Health Promotion from Burnell University and PhD from Southampton University in the UK. Before he moved to Huddersfield University, he was an Associate Dean of Global Engagement and Professor of International Health at Liverpool John Moores University from 2014 to 2019. A senior lecturer in international health at Sheffield University from 2010 to 2014, and a program coordinator and lecturer in international health at the University of Aberdeen from 2002 to 2010. Previously, he worked for Save the Children UK and Ministry of Health in Nepal.
Moving on to our fourth keynote presenter, so Dr. Israeli Juliet Borges de Nascimento is a pharmacist, physician, and a board-certified clinical pathologist. He holds 3 academic titles from the Federation University of Minas Gerais, ranked as the 7th finest university in Latin America. He is enrolled in post-graduation programs in comparative effectiveness research at the University of Paris, and a fellow in the cardiology at the Bristol School of Medicine. He has been working with evidence-based medicine at the 3 Cochrane centers. He is also a medical consultant for the WHO, and recently Dr. Borges created and coordinated one of the most renowned international task forces combining the COVID-19 pandemic and collaboration with research from more than 40 nationalities. Following that, we have Gillian Ireland, is a full-time professor of midwifery, advocate at University Hospital Dorset NHS Foundation Trust. Gillian Ireland holds an honorary position for visiting fellows in the Centre of Midwifery and Women's Health, Bordeaux University. She has a broad interest in maternity care, research and education, most recently around father experiences of having babies in NICU, collaborating with counterparts in Nepal and developing a training program for tutors of BC midwifery courses. Gillian Ireland has around 100 publications, including peer-reviewed journals, book chapters, and conference presentations. Our final keynote speaker is Dr. Ihad Shimkai. Holds a position for Senior Lecturer of Adult Nursing and serves as Deputy Director for Graduate Education with the Schools of Human and Health Sciences at the University of Huddersfield. She possesses extensive experience in nursing research, particularly around international nurses issues, continuing professional development, nurse regulations, and public health research. She recently engaged in the development of the International Nurse Transact Toolkit as part of the research, focusing on international nurses. Presently, she is leading the National Evaluation Initiative aimed at strengthening the ability of Nursing and Midwifery Council of Ghana to oversee and regulate the professional register of nurse midwives to ensure high quality nursing and midwifery care. Now, before we start session number 1, we would like to kindly call on the stage the two chairs that will be for this CME session, Dr. A.B. Singh and Dr. Ashwas Lal. Let us start session 1 with sensitization in research and scientific writing with Professor Ravi Shankar.
Good morning and welcome. So I like to move around. I don't know how much I can move around. It's a bit tricky moving around, but we'll try. So I'm Dr. Reddy. I presently work in the IMU University in Malaysia. So I think, as far as I know, we have a mixture of faculty and students. Okay, the students please raise their hands. More of students. Okay, and then the remaining, as you know, faculty. Do we have anyone else? Not neither faculty nor students practicing doctors. So thank you so much. So thank you for having me at this conference. Yeah. Nice to connect with old friends. Yeah. we always keep on learning. So happy 25th anniversary to SSR Medical College. So I know we're following, we have been in touch, especially Dr. Indrajit has been a close friend. So we look at types of manuscripts. I know we have a time schedule. So this is what happens in research. So you are the author, that's the author in the left side, running towards accepting this sort of paper, getting it accepted. And so many people around, to strike you down. So you've got so many reviewers, editors, plus rejection, first round of peer review. I think some of you know this, if not, your paper, once you submit a paper, usually what happens is it is sent to authorities in the field for the students, and they give their comments. Sometimes they will recommend you reject the paper straight away. Yeah, that also happens. More often it will be revise your manuscript, okay? Substantial revisions are requested. So that's what happens to a research paper. So that's about me. So this is what happens to a manuscript, yeah? So an original research work, you prepare your manuscript, you submit it, it goes through a peer review process, the one shown in blue, then you get a decision. And decision usually will be revisions required. It's very rare that they give you an acceptance. Maybe for a letter to the editor or a shorter article it can sometimes happen. But for an original research article, for it to be accepted without any revisions, that's extremely rare. And you have a better chance of winning the lottery than getting an article accepted straight away. So accepted, and then eventually it will be published. So that's the timeline. So an original research article, I think many of you know it. Have you seen an original research article, students? Maybe are you aware of an original research? Or fine. So it can be quantitative. Quantitative is where we use numbers. We use numbers and statistics. I think they say doctors usually are not good in numbers, and doctors are not good in mathematics. The situation dramatically changes when it's a subject of money. When money comes in, doctors' mathematical skills dramatically improve. Till money is in the background, the skills are quite poor. That's what they say. So the word count varies, and multiple things. Qualitative is where we don't use numbers. So this is quite important. I think Professor Wynne and others will also talk about inline format. So usually an article will follow this particular format. Introduction, where you introduce your topic. That's when we look at some of this in detail later. Then you go to the letter. That's how you're doing the study. Simplified version, but that's basically what it is. You got the results, you present your results, and in the discussion, you interpret your results. You try to see how the results fit in with the literature, what's already known on the topic. So this is the inline format. And the last part of the discussion could be the conclusion, or the discussion, the conclusion can be an entirely separate part of the research paper. And you usually start a paper with an abstract. Abstract can be structured or unstructured. So we'll look at that. So abstract is one of the most important parts of a research paper. You know why? Right? Abstract usually is written last. And abstract is one of the most important parts. Yeah? Because when you look at different indexing services, a full text may or may not be available. Some journals will give you access. But an abstract, you'll nearly always have an abstract. If you look at PubMed, if you look at other services, full access to the abstract is usually nearly always there. Then we got a lay summary. Many journals are now asking this. So lay summary is for the layman. Remember, there has been a lot of debate. There's been disconnect between scientists and the public. Sometimes it was brought about by politicians. Yeah? We're not taking any sides, but Donald Trump has attacked scientists throughout his political career. He has denied science, not just he, many other politicians. Whenever it's convenient, politicians can attack scientists. So scientists should be ready with the data. And this is very important with climate change. The climate change is happening. There are a lot of people who would like to tell us that it's not existing. It's something the scientists are dreaming of. No need to worry. Conflict of interest. So this again is an important part. So maybe we'll come to conflict of interest after some time. A review article, I think Dr. Indrajit said, so he's training students. You know how to write review articles. At least you've begun the process. So reviews can be narrative, where you just narrate what is known on a topic. Can be systematic, where you follow definite inclusion and exclusion criteria. Again, I believe that's what you're working on as far as I know from my communication with Dr. Indrajit. It can be a scoping review, which is the first part before you do systematic, and meta-analysis, where we not only do the review, but you also bring together the data from the included studies, and then you do a secondary analysis. So that's a meta-analysis. Meta-analysis is usually regarded as one of the strongest. There's a hierarchy of evidence. Maybe someone will talk about this in today's presentation. So who can write a review? So many journals, maybe this is important for you, especially as students, they want people who are writing a review to have at least 3 original publications in that topic. Many journals insist, not all journals, but many journals insist that you have at least 3 articles in that particular topic. So usually 6,000 to 8,000 words, that's the limit for a review article. Short communication, so this is another type of article. Many of it might be of interest to students. Research in brief, research communication, below 2,000 words. And they might require an abstract. So many of these articles require an abstract. So some types if you look at shortly, like letter to the editor, those things may not require an abstract. So this is a letter to the editor. So it's comments on a previously published article. Could also be on a new topic. Again, varies according to journal. The word count will vary. Number of references vary, usually around 5. So one important thing to remember when you're writing and submitting an article is, it's a journal who has the power. Maybe you really do not have much power. Because you go, whatever the journal says, you have to follow. The instructions, word count, how they want it written, everything is up to the journal. A research letter, so this is one of the most famous research letters. Anyone knows this? Short research letter to Nature, I think back in 1950, 1953. Very famous, you studied about it, definitely. So what's been described? The structure of DNA, Watson and Crick's original research article on the double helical structure of the DNA. So published as a research letter to the editor in Nature. So Nature again is a high impact journal. Maybe see what's the impact factor as we move along. Study protocols. So now many journals allow you to publish study protocols like PLOS 1. So I'm an academic editor at PLOS 1, as many of us, our speakers would be. And the data policy is there, ethical approval. So you can publish your study protocol also. And you can also publish your data. So lots of other publishing options are opening up. One major challenge for many people is publishing is becoming expensive. You have to pay for publication. That becomes a challenge. Maybe, especially for less resource settings, it's always a challenge. So original report, we have a brief report, so this is what we looked at: reviews, letter to the editor, we can have a commentary, practical advice, medical education, we can have curriculum descriptions, you can have assessments, you can have essays, you have reflections, so many different types of publications are there. There are so many options for publication. This is what I was telling you about a data article. You can deposit your data in an online repository, and this can then become a publication. It gives you something called a digital object identifier or a drawing, and you can, it's a kind of a publication. So data articles again are becoming quite important, and because many journals now want you to deposit your original data. So if you're doing an original research or submitting it to the journal, they want you to deposit your original data in a free, open access repository. And many repositories available. Perspectives, case series, and this will be important for many of you of interest. So case report is one report on a case. Case series is when you bring together several reports on a particular topic. Maybe one example could be a case on HIV. Maybe some unusual presentation in HIV. One is a case. If it brings 5 or 6 together, it can be a case series. So this is some of the things for you to keep in mind. Always obtain consent from the patient. And you need a written consent, not only for doing the study, but also for publishing. And if you have any, the patient can be identified from any of that information. Patient can be identified from the photograph, and consent is strong. And your consent should include those parts also. The patient consents to publishing his or her photograph. The patient consents to publishing his or her personally identifiable information. So that's a very important part, consent. Discuss, so treating clinicians, sometimes they would like to be members of a team. Build your team, gather clinical information, perform in literature. You say why the journal should publish your article. What's to build up a case? Sometimes especially for journals which are well known in the field, you have to create a strong case why you want the journal to publish your particular article. So other publishing types, some journals will publish artwork. So someone is a good artist, they're looking for cover page art, they're looking for other art, that could be another option. There's something called last page in some journals. There is medicine in the arts, which talks about how you can use a particular painting, a particular book excerpt, and then you interpret it. So I've published a few, maybe 2 or 3. So this is usually published in academic medicine and the arts. Then you got teaching and learning movements, which again is in academic medicine. And when I say is where you try and explain some complex concepts. That's what you do when I say that. Method portal, so this is for the faculty. So you develop a new curriculum. The description of the curriculum, method portal will accept. Your curricular description, how you develop, how you deliver your curriculum, how you assess your students. So method portal is one option for faculty members. Medical student journals. So for medical students, in some ways, they make it easier for you because they know your students. They know that you are not as resourced as faculty members. You are still learning. So for medical student journals, there are multiple journals. So we have published along with students in McGill, New Zealand Medical Student Journal. So these are some of the student journals. So I think faculty members and students can collaborate and publish in these journals. Scientific nursing. I think that's the first one. So shall I go on to the next one? And then any questions before anything you want to discuss before we go to number 2? Where I look at parts of a research area. Anything anyone wants to ask? we go on to part 2. We look at those same in-mat format in detail. So initially we looked at, I just introduced the in-mat format. We look at this in detail. I think many of you know this, but we will add something new and you can brush up your knowledge. So which part of the paper should you write first? This again vary according to authors. Usually I always write the methodology first. That's what I recommend whenever someone is writing an original research article. Start with the methodology. But why you do this? Because remember, before you do an original research, you have to submit a research proposal. Dr. Indrajit told about the ethical review committee, whatever it's called. So you have to submit your research proposal to the IRB, ERB, or whatever bodies is there. And in that you have to describe the methodology in detail. Yeah, so your methodology is already there. By the time we begin your study, you already have your methodology. There's only one important change which happens to the methodology. When you move from your proposal to your research paper, what is that change? Anyone? The answer is there. What change should you make to the methodology? Any idea? When you wrote it for a research proposal, you're talking about the future, what you will do. Okay? And now when you're writing your research paper, what has happened? The study is ongoing or study has already finished. So from the future tense, you have to change it to the past tense. Yeah? We did. The other one was we are going to planning to do or we're going to do. So here from the past and future tense, we have to change to the past tense. So proper citation for the ethical approval is a very important part of a research proposal. And without ethical approval, most journals will not publish an original research article. They might publish reviews and other articles, but without an ethical approval from the area where the study was done, I think that also we'll talk about in our conversation. Like, it should not be from some other country. You can have that, but you definitely need ethical approval from the location where the study is being done. Results. So what data to be included in the text and what data to be included in tables. So this again is a question which might need someone who is experienced can guide you. Because you shouldn't duplicate the data. The data in the text and in the tables should be exclusive. Remember, the journals are quite particular that you don't keep on telling the same thing. They are very particular that which section. How many tables follow the journal instructions? Access to data. So many journals will now ask you, if a reader wants to go and look at the data on which your study is based, where can he or she find that data? So before we used to say that this data can be provided by the corresponding author upon reasonable request. But today many people do not look at that very favorably. Unless there are definite contraindications, many journals want you to deposit the data, at least the de-identified data, on a public repository. So this is something I often use. There are so many repositories, but Flickshare again is free. I don't recommend, no conflict of interest with Flickshare, but that's something I use. Introduction. So introduction is where you start the paper. Reference, include some reference management software, Mendeley, Zotero. And these days even AI can help. AI can write. AI is beginning to write papers. And many find AI is writing better than researchers. That's raising a lot of concerns. So how much AI should be? I think we talk about it very figure time. I think other is talking about that. What should be the role of AI? Should we declare or not? So many questions. And most journals use the Vancouver style. You know the Vancouver style? Yeah, so many of you have written some journals. Most often journals use Vancouver style. They're still named after Western cities. Yeah? Maybe there's some amount of colonialism, Harvard, Chicago. We do have Port Louis style, You don't have a Mumbai style of reference. You should come one day. Or maybe a Kuala Lumpur style of citation. Things may change one day. Introduction. The research gap. Why are you doing this particular study? What are your research objectives? Always follow the journal instructions. Some journals have instructions for introduction which are a bit offbeat. It is like, say, Journal of the Nepal Medical Association only allows about 250 words for an introduction. I think same with Journal of Nepal Health Research Council, because we have published some papers there, about 300 words, which may be a bit too short for an introduction. Discussion, interpret your results. Limitations is very important. So what are the strengths of your study? What are the limitations of your study? Limitations are important for other people. Suppose someone else is reading a manuscript. Once he or she should know whether they can apply to their setting, what things they should be aware of. Yeah, all those things are important. So limitation usually is the last part of the discussion, last paragraph. Some journals want it separate, and some journals will end with a conclusion. Conclusions for further research, implications for knowledge and practice. All these are the conclusion section. Tables and figures, follow the journal instructions. Most journals will allow you 4 tables. That's what generally journals allow. Some might allow you 6. There are a few journals which are more generous. Some might allow you 4 tables and 2 figures. So generally around 6. And they're very particular about your resolution of your figures. So most journals want at least 600 rows per inch DPI, or some want even 1200 rows per inch. So these are things which you cannot negotiate and you have to follow. If you want your article to be accepted, these are journal instructions which you should follow. Abstract, final part to be written. Remember this, what type of abstract is this? Anyone? Is it structured or unstructured? Unstructured. So why do you say it's unstructured? One single paragraph. If it's structured, you will have background, methods, results, and conclusion. And you usually will have keywords. So keywords, so one of the best ways to get keywords now is many of you may be aware of MESH. Do you know MESH? Medical subject headings. So MESH has a browser called MESH on Demand. So you take your abstract, paste it in the MESH on Demand browser, the box. Click search. The software will come up with a keyword. So AI is again there. So it's generating the keywords for you, which you can use. And you can try out if you're not trying it already. Decide on a suitable journal. One important thing is APC. You know what is APC? It's also called as other things. APC is article processing charges. Something you have to pay. Increasingly you have to pay. And this has raised a lot of ethical concerns. Not only are you submitting your work, you're also paying for the journal to publish. So reviewers work for free. Editors also work for free mostly. You might be given a small holiday at some time. The people making all the big money, so it's a very lucrative industry, academic publishing, Elsevier, Taylor and Francis. So who makes the money? The big publishers. The big publishers make huge profits. There's been a lot of debate. There's been an accusation that they're using slave labor and not paying the people who are actually doing the work. And big corporations are making billions. And it's a very profitable industry, just after oil, big pharma, now we have big publishing. Big publishing makes big profits. And everyone else gives their labor for free. Copyright, so you have to transfer copyright to the journal. Conflict of interest. So maybe we might look at this in detail later. So these are some of the other forms you have to complete. So this again I did not call it. So this is the author contribution. there's a particular format of writing, an author contribution statement, which we will look at. Ethical considerations, ethical approval, all those we need to study. Consent to participate, consent to publish. Remember I was telling you this in clinical trials, patient studies. Conflict of interest, funding statement, data availability statement. So these are some important statements the journals want. And without this, they may not process your manuscript further. Most journals, the manuscript will not move till they have a satisfactory response to these questions. For this one, anything you want to ask? Let's see how we have time. Because I come from Malaysia, they say one of the most harmful things you can do in Malaysia is, what's the most harmful thing? Stand between people and their food. So it was taken just before tea break, and well before so that people can have their tea and food. I think that's the same everywhere. Never stand between people and their food. Okay, anything you want to ask before we go to the next one? Before we move on to the methods, I'll just introduce you to the methods, and in the last part I will give you some tips on scientific writing, and then the others will take it further. Anything you want to discuss before we move forward? If not, maybe then let's move forward. So we look at the methods. So like I said, I usually recommend it as a first part to write. A lot of it can be modified from your research protocol. Remember that's written in the future. This one already done, you change it to the past. Change it from the future to the past tense. So this is a good, there are lots of good papers on this. Describe what was used, how the materials were prepared, what you did, how you did your measurements, what calculations, what factors can affect your measurements or your data. All this will be part. Which statistical tests are used to analyze the data? What will be your level of significance? Usually, this is always there. So, study setting in place, duration, study design, ethical considerations, funding information. How to randomize if it's a clinical trial. Blinding. So blinding is a term I think I was studying Dr. Emilie's here. So ophthalmologists never like blinding. Blinding is not a good term. So I think many say masking. But blinding is a term they often use in clinical research. The participants are blind. Maybe they're blind because they went into the study. So that part is. And in many developing countries, that's a lot of issues. What was exactly done? What are your variables? How did you calculate your sample size, especially if you're an epidemiologist? They're very particular about sample size. And without sample size, I think maybe Indrajit is also the Nepal Journal of Epidemiology, I think. Without sample size calculations, things become difficult. And statistical analysis do you propose? How will you handle your data? And what statistical tests will you be using? So, write in the past tense. So let's start from here. Write in the past tense. So, university as a writing lab, you can get their help. Proper format, AP or Vancouver. Someone should be able to replicate your studies, and eventually you should proofread your paper before you submit. So participants, materials, procedures, data analysis, ethical considerations. All methods is a very important part of a paper, because when we are reviewing a manuscript, it's a method, it's a section we look at in detail. Because without correct methods, the other parts will not add up. You will not get suitable results. So methods is a very important part of a research paper. You know what is validity and reliability? Are these terms you are aware of? Two very important terms. Anyone knows? Validity is supposed to be, you're developing an instrument. Let's say you're developing an instrument to study stress among students. Your instrument should study stress, not something else. Reliability is you do the same study, repeated multiple times, you get similar results. You study stress, let's not say stress. Stress can vary a lot from day to day or from hour to hour. But let's say you're looking at their attitude maybe towards communication skills, which you do not expect to vary that frequently. You do that study today, you do it after 1 week, you do it after 2 weeks, you expect a similar results. Validity. So some of this you can read about. So take an opinion of experts, you do content validity, you can use instruments which are already validated. You might often be using them. Then you might need to adapt it to your setting. So these are some of the things you should keep in mind. Reliability. So we do a test retest. That is, Cronbach's is often used as a measure of internal consistency. We also look at ease of understanding. When you use developing a questionnaire, because we often use questionnaire-based research, we give it to the participants, or a group which is similar to the participants, and see whether they understand, whether there are any problems with any questions, whether they're able to interpret some of these. Samplings. So this is, so why do we do sampling? The major reason is logistical. We cannot study an entire population, so we study a part of the population. And the assumption we make is the sample is similar to the population. Sample is not significantly, the sample represents the population. That is maybe logically, it's not significantly different. So let's say you want to study the students at SSR Medical College. You select some 50 students. You take a sample. And this 50 students should represent the entire population of students. So that's what we're trying to do. There is software for calculating sample size. I often use this one. I find it quite easy. Raw software, you fill in some parameters and it will give you sample size. And to this you add 20% for attrition, loss to follow-up and all. So this is what it is. Many things you need. So what's the expected margin? Usually 5%. Level of confidence is usually 95%. You know the population size, maybe number of students at SSR Medical College, you know that, feed that in. And then you feed in response distribution. So usually you don't know, you leave it at 50%, and that gives you value. So usually quite easy to calculate with this. If you're not an epidemiologist, if you're an epidemiologist, of course, they will not be happy with these simple calculations. Which statistical tests to use? Again, it depends on the data. Are you aware of a normal distribution? Is that something you know? Data which is normally distributed. If it's normally distributed, you use a particular kind of test. Not normally distributed, you use a different type of test. Maybe we might cover some of this in more detail in later sessions. Ethical considerations, animal ethics, human ethics, many places these are handled by different ethical committees. So animal ethics, there's an animal ethics committee. Some places even both are handled by the same one. Right to free choice. Participants, you should get informed consent. Participant can withdraw from the study at any time without giving any reason. So these are some of the important ethical considerations. And this decision to participate should or should not be influenced. So if it's a patient getting treatment, the patient should not feel that I refuse to participate in this study, the doctor will not treat me better. That is something the ethical committees look at very carefully before they make a decision. Vulnerable populations. Some populations are especially regarded as vulnerable populations. So many of you in the back, students are a vulnerable population. Why? Why do you say students are a vulnerable? Maybe Jared has come out from a vulnerable population. So why are students a vulnerable population? Because the faculty asks you to participate in a study, you might be worried. What will happen if I say no? Will that have some other consequences on me? I refuse. If they come to know who is refusing, what will happen to those people? So that there are also many other vulnerable populations, prisoners, members of the armed forces. But that's not something we'll go up. But just remember there is something called a vulnerable population. Before I go to the final part, and not stand between anyone's teeth and the president. Anything you want to ask?
One small question.
Yes, sir.
What is the validity or reliability of question-based research? Because the answers come from the conscious mind, and the conscious mind is always struck by higher knowledge. How reliable do you think it is?
That's a question which has often been asked because we study so many things. One example is we study empathy. Empathy is a concept which is difficult to say what is empathy. How to measure empathy using a questionnaire. So those are some of the philosophical aspects. Like whether we measure it using a questionnaire. People say it's valid, they've done multiple studies. But what does it mean? Same thing for the attitude towards communication. These are things which are more abstract. So that question is there. Usually what we do is we do content validation. There are multiple, we ask experts, we ask the students who are involved or similar population to the students, and we ask for the validity. We do some statistical tests, test reliability, internal consistency. But at the basic level, the question which you raised is whether this can be regarded as a measure. To measure empathy using a questionnaire. Students has a good score, doesn't mean he or she has a good empathy. That's what we assume. And that's what all the research says. But at a deeper level, that might still be asked. Thank you. So let me go to the last part. This is again quite interesting. How to write a scientific paper. So we look at some tips for effective scientific writing. Again, within the short time we have, of course, we cannot go into the details. But at least some of the important aspects we look at. So what we'll do, so this is, we'll examine professors' writing rules. This is based on Professor Colin Binns. I think he's an epidemiologist from Australia. So he has developed 10 rules for scientific writing. The 10 commandments. I find that quite interesting, so I often use that. Advice regarding more effective writing. Again, for most of us, our first language is not English. So we again struggle. There's a struggle because we don't, that's not the language we use, even though English is something we use very often. Not a first language, so that has its own limitations. Midnight rule, so that's the first rule. So what does the midnight rule say? Not what's obvious. What's the midnight rule in writing? So, go to bed in time. Yes. Best writing is done at midnight. So usually who makes the decision on your paper? Who decides the paper should be accepted or not? Who are the people? Ultimately it's the editor. But the editor bases the decision on the reviewer. So reviewers usually are busy people. You get so many invitations. The more you will work on that field, every day you get 3-4 invitations to review. So make it easy for the reviewers. Reviewers review whenever they get some time, because there are other occupations. Because reviewing is unpaid. Even today, most journals do not give you anything if you review. They just give you more work, nothing else, no other benefits. So reviewing is voluntary. Write clearly, section the paper well to make it easier for the reviewers. This one is interesting. The girlfriend, boyfriend rule. I think it's students. I think you may be already doing it.
Yeah.
Anything? So what does the girlfriend, boyfriend rule say? And this one is quite obvious. It's clear, no deviations. Anyone? Once you write, show it to your girlfriend. Yes. That's what it's or show it to your boyfriend. Why?
They're very critical.
Girlfriends can be very critical. So that may not be much useful to show it to a boyfriend. Because boyfriends usually may not criticize. So don't know, we never know these things. So you get a layperson perspective. If that person is not a doctor, you get a layperson perspective. That person is a doctor or a medical student, again you get a critical perspective. Grandmother, what does the grandmother will say? Very important, but it could look at it in a different. It has changed these days. This was in the days of printed copy. These days, where do you keep our documents?
Cloud.
Cloud. Everything is in the cloud. I think there was a nice cartoon from, I think, many of you know R.K. Lakshman, one of the, so he was looking, there were two farmers and they were discussing why it's not raining. So they said most of the clouds are owned now by Amazon and Apple and IBM. So no clouds for rain, and that's what they were telling. But before clouds, we used to keep a paper copy. Remember, you have your data, whatever you have. So that will act as a backup. And you'll also get a good deal from your grandmother. Multiple benefits. Multiple backups. Because there's nothing more distressing than losing your data. We did so much work. And now we remember virus attacks, hacking, competitors, so many things can be there. First and last rule. So the most important parts in a paper are the first paragraph and the last paragraph. And the same thing in the paragraph, first and last. I think in the good old days of essay questions, students also knew that. And so the first sentence will be on the topic. The last sentence in the paragraph will be on the topic. In the middle it will be something totally unrelated. So they know that no one reads through everything. Only the critical parts. Below. So what's the most important part of your research? If you're doing an original research article, your research objectives. Everything should be around your research objectives. I recommend sleep with your objectives under your pillow. So objectives are in your introduction, your methodology, your research is based on the hours. Nursery rhyme rule. So nursery rhymes actually have a double meaning. That's not something we knew as kids. They have a meaning which is obvious, but also got very deeper meaning, more sinister or more dark meaning. So do not use double meaning. I do not. That's mainly for the movies. Whenever you're doing scientific writing, clear. Write very clear. No flowery language, slang or exaggerations. Define your bottom line. Help the reader understand the significance of your research. Not taking anyone from tea, that's very important. This often happens. You begin to write, ideas don't. Anyone wants to summarize? That's all I wanted to say. So maybe we looked at, so what we looked at was, we looked at the different types of research, different types of manuscripts. So we looked at each part in detail, yeah, and then we focused on the methodology, probably a very important part. And then I gave some tips, or shared some tips. These are not actually my tips, I borrowed it from the literature. Some of it is based on my evidence as an author and a researcher. Anything else? So it's open to discussion. We still have some time for tea or coffee. And again, it's not malicious. I think people may not be very particular. Does anyone wants to say any questions or anything you want to share? Sure.
In terms of the English, journals often ask American English or British English. Based.
That's true, very true. You can use either, but do not use a mixture of both. They specify, journals, if they're particular, they will specify. We want American English, we want British English. Generally, if they don't specify, you can use either, but not a good idea to combine. Thank you. Yes, okay.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a question. Thank you, sir, for your wonderful presentation. I have a question for you. For reliability analysis, we are using a software, Cronbus Alpha. For validity, are we having any software to analyze that, or we have to do it through expert for content validity, construct validity, or face validity? Because we are done by expert opinion.
Generally, as maybe the others can add, as far as I know, there are some calculations, like something called a CVI, or a content validity index, but that's just a mathematical construct from the schools. As far as I know, I have sent it to content experts, subject matter experts. And as far as I know, there's no software, maybe anything. Yeah. Because it's still subjective, this validity, you're looking at an expert, and the expert is making his or her judgment, and that again can be subjective. We try to be as objective as possible, but subjectivity is not something you can rule out. Again. That again is, whenever you're making a judgment, there's an element of subjectivity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And for face validity, is we should do only a pilot study, or is there any other way we can do a face validity?
Face validity for a questionnaire, one thing is you can take a similar population, because generally what happens is, if you're doing it in a population, you don't want to lose members of the population. So those whom you do your validity, your pre-testing, you cannot use them for the main study. So similar population, if that's not a problem, you can use the main population also. You ask them about, there's something called cognitive interview. That's again similar. You talk to these people, your respondents, ask them what each question means, and you ask them to explain to you so that you know that they've got the correct meaning. So for face validity, again, I think some people also use the same index. Just like we got CVI, we got a similar index. But again, that's agreement. That also has been done.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Anything else? Because I think we just introduced, because there are a lot. All these are topics which we can discuss for 10 to 3 days. So just an overview. And each of these topics will be covered. Could be a 2 or 3 day workshop by itself. So that's something else. That's one of the challenges. Anything from the students? Anyone? Yes. You have all the approvals to proceed. Any questions? Yes. Dr. Indrajit has given all approvals.
Ma'am, just a short question. In relationship to, I said the presentation was poor, thank you very much. And let's say about any new come up for queen and color gender. we go along with new literature cover? Just briefly.
Journals recommend the use of inclusive language, so that, and again, address in terms of respect, other sexual orientations. So some terms like I think homosexuality and other things are becoming because they have a negative connotation. So maybe alternate sexual orientation or sexual preferences is one part where a lot of it has come. Just like that, some other terms like need maybe some not recommended. So maybe, especially in the United States, it has a lot of negative connotations. So maybe they use African Americans, people of color. So those things. Journals will specify often. This is the language we want inclusive language. These are the pronouns we recommend. These are the pronouns we recommend you don't use as an author. So more inclusive language.
In the UK, we've already introduced this, but you don't address somebody by his gender.
Yeah. I think most journals are moving towards that already. Some have already specified, others will be doing it shortly. So that's how it's moving. Anything?
That's a very good question. I have some incident. I did my research on sex worker, and then the paper. So I think it's a better to, if you are submitting a particular journal, see what type of word they are using. For example, in America or many parts of the world, there is a very polarized group about the sex work. One people say that no, we shouldn't call them sex worker, we should call them prostitute. So if you write the article, put the term prostitute and one type of journal, they even read your manuscript, they just type that word. If there's that one word on the manuscript, they just say no, that's not the right word you use. So it's a very sensitive, and especially gender, sexuality, and some of the ethnic terminology. That's, I think, it's a quite sensitive when we use in a journal article. I would advise to see, if you are submitting a journal, see what type of word they have used on that terminology, on that particular case, and then probably it's a safe to go on the side. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a minefield, I'm not aware of, and cause a lot of problems as an author, and even for the journal, and it's important that we take with respect modern terminologies. Anything else?
Thank you very much, Professor, for a wonderful presentation. Please come on stage, Dr. Hussain, Dr. Ahmed, to hand over the certificate to the Professor.
Thank you, Professor Ravishankar. Now we'll break for coffee and we'll meet back here at 11 sharp.